So our question for today is, who are the Acadians and why are they important in Louisiana history? The Acadians, they always show up on the leap because they've had a huge impact on the history and the culture of Louisiana. First, who are the Acadians? That's our phase one. That's our first step for understanding how they got to be in Louisiana and the impact of their culture. The Acadians originally migrated to Canada, which is right north of America, for the free land that they could get there and for a better life. Remember, these were French people who were living under feudalism in France, and so they were the peasants at the bottom of the ladder who were constantly getting trampled on by the knights and nobles and the king. They wanted something better than that. So they moved to Canada, where they became hunters, fishermen, farmers. They got to have their own villages, they got to speak their own languages, do whatever they wanted with religion, but they still considered themselves French. They spoke French, and they were loyal to the King of France. That means that when the King of France calls them, they would go and fight in his armies, and in fact, this does happen later on, and it turns into a pretty big conflict. So when the Acadians came from France, they landed right there, where you can see the red circle and the black arrow. You can see it's just north of the 13 colonies. Remember, the 13 colonies are where the British were and where the Americans end up having their revolution. But this is even before the revolution happened. So right now you might want to stop and pause the video and fill in your graphic organizer where it says phase one. Figure out what were the Acadians doing, where did they go, and why did they go there. And now we're going to move on to phase two. Phase two is talking about the French and Indian War and the expulsion of the Acadians. So the French and Indian War, we talked about this the other day in Dartmouth. Corey told somebody to do something, and in Columbia, I believe somebody ended up getting shot twice. But the British in this case won the war against the French, and they won the war in Canada. So that meant that they took all of the French lands. They took everything that belonged to France, all the people that lived in French land. They were now under the control of the British. And the British, they decided that anybody who was French would have to swear that they obeyed the British. So we have here the British being totally victorious. If you want to be living in the same place, you want to be living under the British, then you have to swear to obey the British king. If you don't swear to obey the British king, then we don't really trust you. So the Acadians kind of fell under that category. And the Acadians, they're looking at this and they say, well, if we swear to obey the British king, then if he calls us into battle to fight for the British against the French, we'd be killing our own people. So we don't want to do that. And so what the Acadians do is they basically say, no, we are not going to obey your king. The British turn around. They don't like the way that the Acadians are talking. They don't like the way the Acadians think about them. And they pull a Muhammad Ali on them and knock him out. How do they do this in particular? We're going to go more into that later on today. You're going to see some video footage of how exactly it happened. But to be brief, the British showed up, burned down their villages, put them on ships, and kicked them out of Canada. Right now we're finished with phase two, so you might want to, on your page, go in, write what happened in phase two and why that happened. And here's phase three. Where are they going to go? So the British, when they kicked them out, they put them on boats and sent them back to their home country of France. Remember, these are people that didn't like France. They didn't like living under the French king. They didn't like living under the system of feudalism where they were peasants. And they wanted their own land. They didn't want to live as a peasant under a knight who's going to tell them what to do all the time. So they go back there because the British sent them there. But they're not very happy. And that brings us to phase four, which is going to be this arrow right here. That happened in about 1800. And here is phase four. Why Louisiana? So the Acadians, they decide to come to Louisiana. They come from France on ships and land in New Orleans and then settle the coast of Louisiana. So why they do that? Why not go to Boston? Why not New York? Everybody likes New York, right? But the Acadians, they came for three reasons to Louisiana. First, people in Louisiana spoke French. Remember, these were French people. They were loyal to the French king. They liked the French. They spoke French. Second, people there were also Catholic. They had the same religion as the Acadians. The Acadians felt comfortable with that. They were going to go there. Third, there was available land and resources. Louisiana was pretty empty at the time. And remember, all the Native Americans had died because of diseases. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And the French people there were trying to get more and more people to come. Also, there was all that seafood and stuff on the coastline that the Acadians knew how to get because they had been hunters and fishermen and farmers back up in Acadia. So they decided to come to Louisiana. Today, we still see a huge part of the Acadian culture in what we call now Cajun culture. And that's kind of what people identify with Louisiana. A lot of the French speaking, a lot of the understanding of the type of music and the type of food that comes from the Acadians. And today, you can see that in the southern part of Louisiana, this part that's highlighted in red, which is now called Cajun country. So for the rest of the day, you're going to learn a little bit more, delve a little deeper into each of these parts, but that's your general overview of the Acadian Odyssey. Enjoy the rest of the time.